So in the last talk, we were discussing about citta, the basic nature of knowing. Okay. So, and we were going through the instruction on Cittānupassanā given by the Buddha in the Satipatthana Sutta. We're discussing the various cittas listed there. So that the Buddha instructed us to note. So Saraganjitam, knowing with greed. Okay? So, and then there's Vitaragajitam, knowing without greed. Okay? So as we explained, so when the knowing arises with greed, you note it. When it disappears, then you notice that there's another knowing present that is without greed. Okay? Then there's the Sadosachitam, knowing with anger. So, and we note that knowing with anger, we notice it disappear, then another knowing without anger, vita dosa chitta, is present. Mm. Similarly, samoha chitta, vita moha chitta, knowing with delusion and knowing without delusion. Then there is Sankita Chitta, the knowing that is contracted or shrunken. That means knowing that is affected by sloth and torpor. Okay? So when you note this chitta, you note it energetically and it disappear, then another chitta is present. And that is open and bright and clear. Okay? And as Vikita Chitta, that means knowing that is distracted. That means knowing that is affected by uddhacca or restlessness. So when you note this, knowing it disappears, then in its place another knowing that is peaceful and still is present. Mm. So basically, this instruction is to note how one knowing arises and disappear, and then once it disappears, there's another knowing different from the earlier one that also arises and disappear, and it goes on in this way. This nature, chitta, knowing, keep arising, disappearing moment to moment. Okay? So by noting in this way, the yogis can come to realize the nature of impermanent suffering and non-self of the chitta. And then the Buddha also talked about noting of this Mahagata Chitta and Amahagata Chitta. Okay? So Mahagata means something like exalted, lofty, great or grand Chitta. Okay? So these are Mahagata Chitta, Chittas that are developed through samatha practice. Okay? So they are the Chitta involved in the development of the samatha jhanas. Okay? So since we do not develop that, we don't experience that, we don't have to concern ourselves with this. Okay? But what we are concerned with is the other one, Amahagata Chitta. Okay? So this refers to this Kamavachara Chitta, the sense sphere consciousness. Okay? So like the eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, and so on. Okay? So it's every time when you see, you're not seeing, seeing. When you hear, you're not hearing, hearing. Okay? And so if you do it rightly, actually, you are supposed to be noting the consciousness. Okay? When you're not hearing, hearing, you're supposed to be noting the ear consciousness, the knowing of the sound. Okay? And you're not seeing, seeing, supposed to be noting the eye consciousness, okay? The knowing of the visible object, and so on. Okay? So, so in our practice, we do note this type of chitta. Okay? One way that the yogi note this is the knowing mind. Okay? So sometimes yogis report about the knowing mind. Yeah? Like when you're noting rising, rising, the pushing. Each time you're not pushing, you may notice that together the pushing, that is the knowing of the pushing. Okay? That's pushing, that's knowing of pushing, then another pushing, another knowing. Okay? So mm, that knowing mind is also chitta. Okay? It comes under this mm, amahagata chitta or kamavachara chitta. Okay? Mm. Then Buddha also talk about Sauttara Citta and Anuttara Citta. These two are also basically the same as Mahagata and Amahagata. Okay? So, just different names. Mm. So, like Anuttara Citta means the Anuttara means there's nothing higher than it. Okay? So again, it refers to those jhana chittas that are developed through samatha meditation. Okay? And sauttara chitta are those chitta, that means it's something higher than this chitta. Chitta is something higher than this. Okay? So again, it refers to this sense sphere consciousness. Right? Then there is samahita chitta. Right? That means the and also asamahita citta, knowing as concentrated and knowing that is not concentrated. Okay? So this samahita citta, citta that arise with samadhi. Okay? So in the case of the samatha yogis, it refers to the apana and upachara samadhi. Okay? So the absorption, concentration, and the excess concentration. So the chitta that arises together with this concentration. In the case of vipassana yogi is anicca samadhi. Okay? So, uh, so when the knowing arises completely fixed on each moment of experience. Okay? So, and then asamahita chitta is when the mind, the knowing is distracted. Usually is affected by the five hindrances. Okay? So that's called asamahita chitta. Then there is vimutta chitta and avimutta chitta. Okay? Vimutta here means liberated. Yeah? In this case, it means liberated, free from the defilements. Okay? Mm, so like when the yogi, the noting arises with samadhi. So at that time, the hindrances are not present. The mind is free from the defilements. So at that time, it's vimutta, liberate. Okay? Or when the yogi, the mind experiencing insight, uh, clear insight into impermanent suffering and non-self. At that time, also the mind is pure. uh, mm. So, mm, and at other times, then the mind is affected, arise together with defilements, and is avimutta citta. Mm. Yeah, so this is the basic method, Cittānupassanā, given by Buddha himself. So, as we say, essentially it means just uh, note one knowing how it arises and disappear, and then notice how this is followed by another knowing, okay? And so on and so forth. Okay? Mm. So basically, is to observe the process of the chitta, the knowing arising and disappearing moment to moment. Okay? Now, when you're not like this, at first, you only see the change in the chitta. Like then there's knowing with greed, one moment, and then next moment there's knowing without greed. Okay? So, mm, but here, at first you may still think that it's the same chitta, the same knowing. Okay? Mm. So, mm, and usually you identify this with a person who knows, somebody here who knows. Okay? So the knower, so he's in. And there's I who knows, I know, and I have been here. Uh, Not just now, but also this morning, yesterday, last week, last month, last year, and so on. Continue to be here tomorrow, next week, next month, and so on. Okay? So you still have an idea as the same person, uh, as permanent person who knows. Okay? Mm. But as you continue the practice, so later on in the Satipatthana instruction, also the Buddha instructed to note the nature of arising and the nature of disappearing of this citta. Okay? Samudaya Dhamma, Vaya Dhamma. Okay? Mm. So when the yogi is able to note this clearly, he sees the nature knowing arises and disappear. It's a new knowing every moment. It's not the same knowing. Okay? Mm. So knowing is always new every moment, and it's also disappearing every moment. Okay? So there's no permanent person here who knows. Okay? There's only a new chitta, new nature of knowing arising moment to moment. Okay? Mm. So when the yogi is able to discern like this, then he can go into the development of vipassana, discern clearly the chitta, they are impermanent, and therefore suffering as well as non-self. Because chitta is very subtle, so it's very difficult to discern a change in chitta. Yeah? And needless to say, it is even more difficult to discern the arising and disappearing of the chitta clearly. Okay? So, in order to do this, you need a very good degree of samadhi, okay? And continuous mindful noting. Okay? So, you have to develop this continuous mindful noting together with samadhi before you will be able to discern the nature of chitta, right? Because it's very subtle. Okay? So it's comparable to a ghost hiding deep in a cave. Okay? So a ghost out in the open is already very difficult to see. And the ghost is hiding deep in the cave is even more difficult. Yeah? Mm. So yeah. One of our teacher described chitta as the background of the mind. Okay? So whenever a yogi asks him, what is chitta? Then you ask you back, what is at the back of your mind? So you have to go and find out the answer for yourself. Yeah? So you have to meditate. Yeah. So this question, you can think all you want, you cannot find the answer, because the answer has come from experience in meditation. Right? So if you develop your noting mind until a point where it's so clear, when you note the experience, you notice that in the background of the mind, yeah, there's this subtle quality of knowing. And that is chitta. So it's at the background of the mind. It's very passive. Okay? So very subtle. Okay? That is at the back of the mind. Mm. Mm. So, so the nature of citta, nature of knowing, is so subtle. And that at first it can be difficult to discern is change directly. Okay? Mm. But the cetasikas, the mental states that arises together with citta, like restlessness, sloth and torpor, greed, hatred, delusion. Okay? So these mental states, they are more active and more gross. Okay? So therefore the change is easier to discern. Okay? So when learning to contemplate the mind, to note the mind, and the mind here means citta and cetasika together. Okay? So, so when learning to contemplate or note the mind, we usually begin uh, by being more aware of the cetasikas or the mental states themselves. Okay? Because they are more gross, active, and therefore easier to discern. Okay? Whereas the nature of bare knowing, the citta is more subtle and it is passive, it's in the background of the mind. So, and it's the more active and gross cetasikas. Mm. Mm. But as you develop your practice as a noting mind becomes more and more developed, the cetasikas that arise, mental states that arise also starts to become more and more refined. Okay? And when this happens, the yogi will be able to begin to notice the nature of knowing that is together with the cetasikas. So you notice the citta cetasikas, they're always together. Okay? And you notice that when the cetasikas, the mental state change, so too the citta. Right? So and notice that they also arises and passes away together, moment to moment. Okay? Mm. And this is actually the Buddha's way of Cittānupassanā. Okay? By being aware of the change of the citta together with the cetasikas. So one moment there is saragancitta, knowing with greed. Next moment you know it disappear, another knowing without greed. You notice the change in the citta together with the cetasikas. This is the Buddha's method of Cittānupassanā. But there is actually another method of Cittānupassanā. That is by noting the nature of knowing as it arises with each sense experiences. Okay? So we have described this just now. Noting, seeing, hearing, smelling, and so on. So each time you note seeing or hearing, so you note the knowing. You note the hearing now. You hear the sound. You know there's a sound, and then there's the knowing of the sound. Okay? And when you see, there's the visible object, and there's the knowing of the visible object. Okay? Mm. So, so you note the nature of knowing as it arises with each sense experiences. Okay? So even when you're not rising, falling, sitting, touching, lifting, pushing, dropping. Okay? So we should not rising, the knowing of the rising, another rising, knowing, another rising, knowing. Okay? When you're not sitting, also there's the knowing of the sitting. When you're not lifting, there's knowing of the lifting, and so on. Okay? Mm. So this is another method. Mm. But because nature knowing is very subtle. So before you are able to discern knowing arising with each sense experience, first you must develop enough sharpness and clarity of mind. That means you need to develop the mindfulness, the concentration first. So, so if you have not developed sufficiently, you will not be able to discern this nature of knowing with every single noting. Right? So then you are not ready for Cittānupassanā. Okay? So Cittānupassanā is not a practice for beginners. Okay? So if you are still struggling with Kayanupassana, needless to say, you're not ready. Okay? So first, you must start with noting of the basic primary object. Okay? Noting arising, falling, sitting, touching, lifting, pushing, placing, and so on. Okay? That means Kayanupassana. Okay? So you must use Kayanupassana, contemplation of the body, as a foundation to develop the strength of the mindfulness, the strength of the concentration, the sharpness and the clarity of the noting mind. Okay? So you have to note continuously, until you are able to discern clearly, rupa sabhava, the material nature clearly. Every time you note. So all this nature of hardness, softness, stiffness, tightness, heat, cold, and so on. Every time you note, you must be able to discern clearly this physical sensation present with each object that you note. Okay? Mm. So then when the noting of this material nature is clear enough, then as you are noting this material nature, okay? So when the noting becomes clear enough, sharp enough, then at some point you notice that even as you're noting the material nature, there's another quality present in the experience, quality of knowing. Okay? So as we mentioned just now, when you note rising, you notice as knowing of quality of knowing of the rising together with it. Okay? So So every time you note rising, 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 that's knowing, knowing, knowing together. So the knowing is like a shadow uh, of the object, following it very closely, moment to moment. Okay? Even when you're walking meditation, when you're not lifting, 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 pushing, 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 every time you note, uh, you notice that's not just the material nature. Yes, knowing, present, shadowing, and the material nature. It's like a shadow following very closely. Okay? Mm. Mhm. So once you can discern the nature of knowing every time you note the primary object, then it follows that when you note the secondary object also, you'll be able to discern the nature of knowing together with the secondary object. So that means when noting any experience, whether primary or secondary object, you always notice there's object and the knowing together. So the knowing is always shadowing the object. Okay? Mm. So once you are able to discern the nature of knowing every time you note an object, okay, then if you want to practice Cittānupassanā, then what you do is you direct your attention. Every time when you note, you direct your attention only to the nature of knowing. Every time you note, direct it only to note the nature of knowing. Okay? So, but only do this if you're able to discern nature of knowing every time you know. Okay, if you are still, sometimes you can discern, sometimes you cannot discern, then you are still not ready. Okay, only when you can discern it every moment, and then you can direct your attention just to noting of the nature of knowing. Yeah? Mm. So, so you keep directing it every time experience arise. When you note the experience, direct the mind to not only the nature of knowing. Okay? So the object is still there, but your attention goes to the knowing. You direct it towards that. Yeah? Mm. So when you do this, you may start to feel the object becoming more and more distant, like in the background. Okay, so it's not so clear anymore. But the nature of knowing will become clear. Okay, it's like when you're talking to two person, okay, and you're facing one person directly, another person is at the side. You still know the person is there. Okay, but you're facing the other person, so you see that person more clearly. The other person, not so clear, right? Mm. So, so you keep directing the attention continuously only to the nature of knowing as it arises with each object. Okay? So you continue to watch carefully. uh, mm. So as you do so, as the practice develops further, you start to see, discern the subtle change in the chitta with each object. Okay? Yes. With each object that is noted, you notice the chitta very clearly arising and disappearing together. Mm. So, so you, so from here, you can discern clearly its nature of impermanent. Yeah? When you can discern the nature of impermanent, then you also discern its nature of suffering and non-self. Yeah? So, so by doing so, uh, when you see this clearly, then you break the identification with the chitta as a permanent knower. You see clearly there's no permanent knower in our experience as just a process of dukkha going on moment to moment. Mm, mm. Okay, let's stop here tonight.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Namaskara.